Since the beginning of time, we have looked to our betters, not those that are wealthier, morally superior, or have worked harder, those that are literally better manifestations of us as a species. We have afforded them the idea of divine right to rule over us. And we have gone so far in the modern age where mysticism has fallen away to reflect this in our pop culture, our comic books, our movies, our science fiction, our celebrities. We are, as a people, obsessed with the idea. Well, as we all know, two great titans of industry that represent this idea better than any mere mortal. Two titans of industry that have forged a career on the anvil of MSP combat, growing bigger and more powerful. Finally, after years of us waiting, we were granted the other week their penultimate combat, the fight of the century, the battle between two biblically accurate forces. That's right, my friends. I'm talking about a Reddit fight. I'll link to the Reddit thread in question in the post here. But part of what I was being somewhat dramatic about at the beginning, there is somewhat of an obsession amongst us as people that we want to assume that there is a better version of ourselves. And we tend to be obsessed with anything, any sort of storytelling that paints this idea that somebody can become, is born, or is gifted with the ability to be better. Superheroes, comic books, sci-fi, action movies, all of that. All of it really is tied around that idea. As a result, I find it incredibly amusing when we get a Reddit conflict like we had the other week, for one simple reason. It reminds all of us that they're just regular people like you and me. Now, for those who don't know the full scoop, I will kind of summarize it here because A, I don't want to get a cease and desist, and B, reading is fun and you should go enjoy this thread on your own. But allegedly, we have a representative from Team Owl who offered some insider thoughts and commentary on the recent change in title of the leader of Team Retriever. Team Retriever decided to arbitrate, allegedly, these comments in Reddit, which we'll get to at the end of the video why maybe that's not a good social media strategy, whoever's in charge over there at Team Retriever. What the fuck are you doing over there? Some claimed that the individual who was arbitrating on behalf of Team Retriever was in fact their great leader, wearing a false name so as to be able to walk among us as one of us. In that argument, some allegations were made that supported some of the reasons why Team Owl allegedly felt that this change in title was warranted, and some allegations around some of the behavior that may have caused the great leader of Team Retriever to fall from grace. Now, as far as I know, since none of us actually work directly for Team Retriever and were there, they shall remain, just as I have said here, allegations, because, well, whether we want to rush as the internet to judge someone or not, and whether we're right or wrong, that is not how the legal system works in most of the countries where we're watching this. So if you're rushing to the comments to type how evil one of these teams are, Ḥkuna your tatas for a minute, and let's see what happens before we all go running out with the, tar and feathers. The whole thread's really entertaining, and if you read the whole thing, I'm not saying that the subject matter being discussed is entertaining. If it is true, it's pretty terrible. It's more the fact that it's happening at all. It should be no surprise to anybody. We've seen it over the last decade of celebrities, for lack of a better term, famous rich people with loud voices, using platforms like Twitter to arbitrate their opinions in the world, and there are large camps of people who eat that up either way, either because they love it or they hate it. And this does tie back to what we started the video with. We do tend to hero worship. Importantly, it is normally people that are at a level of intangibility where this happens. And in this case, what I think is wonderful for us in the MSP space, and I don't mean that sarcastically, this isn't intangible at all. These are two small business owners, technically still, but two small business owners that started, they're nerds. They started nerd companies like you right there. either through a dark pact with entities that remain unseen and unknown, or through hard work and luck, or a combination of all three, they grew two massive companies that are the Coke and Pepsi of our industry. It's easy along that growth, especially within our industry, to start putting them in that same level of intangibility as we might some of the other people we have talked about, to thinking about them as being better than us. And what's wonderful is, well, how did every nerd who's been on the internet since the early 90s, how did all of you first learn the idea not to fight someone else on the internet? Right? It's from doing it. Whether that was in a chat room in a video game, or on a BBS, or on a forum. What did our two friends do the other week? The exact same thing probably most of you have done at some point in your career. They had a fight on the internet in a public technical forum. And I think it's wonderful, because it reminds all of us they are just regular people. They are just regular people. They are not gods. They are not titans of industry. They are not better than us. They are just regular people. And I love that, because you're regular people. And if we, for a minute, brush aside our opinions and emotions and rumors and thoughts around both camps, think about that. Two regular people who had an idea, who wanted to build it, and through a series of, no doubt, their own efforts, luck, other people, whatever, they built it. And that's the dream that so many of you have, right? At your MSPs, that's what you want to do. You want to build something out of sometimes literally nothing. And here's two people that did. And then they just showed us the other week that they're still just regular people like you. I had ChatGPT summarize for me what it felt the breakdown was in terms of Team Owl versus Team Retriever, and sort of the overall sentiment. Boy, was there a lot of Team Retriever bashing in that thread, overwhelmingly more so than any other type of feedback. And well, if you were to allegedly hear it from Team Retriever, that's because our MSP is fixed by the moderators and is designed to intentionally only allow anti-retriever content on there, which is hilarious and out of touch. And I go back to the point I made earlier. Holy shit, whoever is in charge of social media at that company, what the fuck are you doing? Are you in charge of firefighting in Los Angeles County as well? Like, where the fuck have you been? Do something. Anyways, most of the content in there was content that was skeptical and critical of Team Retriever. On or off topic, it was just negative. There were some folks that were defending Team Retriever, and in many cases defending them with the same kind of language that I would probably defend them with, which is, I've never directly had any of these problems, which, spoiler alert, when I did use some of their products at my MSP, I never had any of these problems. You know, my monkey's not my circus. A lot of people fell into the third category, probably my category, of just cynical observation about the entire thing. And a fair number of people made a point that I want to rehash for the end of this Spicy Monday video. Little thought. There's a lot of small discussions around the idea of community sentiment and reputation, and the fact that neither one of the people alleged to have been a part of this internet fight has a lack of skeletons in their closet. There are behaviors, both public and privately circulated, amongst both Team Owl and Team Retriever that I think we would all find distasteful, at least in a business context. The bulk amount of the sentiment was against Team Retriever. And if we take it a little wider and look through other sources that are not just RMSP, we generally see the same trend, that Team Retriever tends to kind of get hated on everywhere they go, versus Team Owl, which is seen more like your incompetent little brother that can't seem to manage to tie his own shoes properly. It's not an excuse, and I don't mean lovable idiot, just they don't get the same level of hate. Why is that? And one of the points that I would make, and if we look to some of the other relatively large vendors in our space that are looking to go enterprise, like these two, that don't get talked about very much, I think part of that is simply an acknowledgement and a respect for the community within the MSP industry, and not literally spitting in the face of it all the time. So if you're watching this and you need a takeaway, especially if you work in relations or marketing at a vendor, any community within this industry that you maybe turn your nose up at and you think, well, the people in that community aren't worth my time because of insert reason. And I mean this genuinely. This is one of the few times in one of these videos where especially if you're a vendor and you're watching this, I am talking about you. Normally I say I'm not. I am. All of my vendor friends and foes. This is a good example of why all of you need to get the fuck over yourselves and recognize that as big as this industry may be and as global as it may be, everybody talks to each other. And I understand that social media sentiment does not typically have a direct impact on short-term revenue, but it absolutely does long-term. And if this industry wants a parallel to a similar industry that has ignored that lesson for the last decade and is now finally feeling the pain, look over to the video game industry that over the last 10 years started to pivot away from the core community that built that industry and started spitting in its face over and over again. Now we have some major studios that are going out of business this year after they have released some of the most out of touch, unwanted, and arguably horribly put together bits of content they've ever put together. Look what happened. So if you work at a vendor and you think that there are parts of the MSP community that aren't worth your time or are just full of trunk slammers or are super negative or toxic, which are things I hear a lot, especially about Reddit and some of the other ones, I don't think the community is the problem. I think you're the problem, and you need to figure out a way to work with them, because there are some vendors that are working with them, and those vendors are just quietly growing and generally don't get drawn and quartered on the internet. And give this a little more time, longer term, but 5 to 10 years, those are going to be the vendors that are laughing with 20 to 30% global enterprise market share, while you're over here slumming it with, 20% market share of just the MSP space. But I mean, that's cool. If your ambition as a vendor is just to make a couple tens of millions versus billions, cool. So it's the vendors I'm talking to here, I know their goal is to be multiple, iterations of billions. Maybe use the example that Team Retriever has put in front of us, that 3 to 5 years of consistent supervillainous shit goblinry will cause the public to automatically believe any allegations, no matter where they come from and how unsubstantiated they are. I would say that's common sense, but apparently it's not. Have the spiciest of Mondays, even though this wasn't very spicy, really more of a moment of zen. Go read the Reddit posts and be reminded at the end of the day, if you're doubting yourself at all in your journey to success at your company, they're just people. It's like you and me, just people. They put on their flying hover pants one leg at a time, the same way we do. And they fight on the internet the same way we do as well.